So I will share this PDF, okay, later. So I have covered CTVS from both Swartz and Seviston. Okay, most of the things. Only MCQ points. Okay, first I will come to this area of blood supply to the larynx and upper trachea. Okay, so you see the inferior thyroid artery is supplying the trachea. Okay, just remember. They will confuse whether superior tracheal artery, superior thyroid artery, or inferior thyroid artery. Inferior thyroid artery, it's supplying the trachea. Okay, inferior thyroid artery. That is sensitive. Then these are the diagram of the principal post-intubation lesions. Okay, what are the post-intubation lesions? Okay, first A is this is a circumferential lesion. A is this is a circumferential lesion. Okay, so because of the cuff, because of the endodermal cuff, and this is second is where after the use of tracheostomy tubes, the potential lesion after the use of tracheostomy tubes. Okay, so this B is at the stomal level. See, this is at the stomal level. Okay, so this is at the cuff level. Okay, and the number C is it is damage to the subglottic larynx. Okay, and this tracheoesophageal fistula. These are the various injuries possible after post intubation. Okay, and there is a tracheoinnominate artery fistula. Okay. So next comes your algorithm for the evaluation of the treatment of tracheal neoplasm. So tracheal neoplasm came. So what to do? Okay. So if you are suspecting high index of suspicion, so it's a cough, dyspnea, hemoptysis, stridor, hoarseness, that is there. Then you have to do flexible or rigid bronchoscopy. Okay, followed by a complete staging you have to do. Okay, if it is the yearly, if it is debridement, you can go for debridement laser ablation initial stage itself while doing bronchoscopy itself. If it's not possible, you have to go with a complete staging using CT or PET or mediastinoscopy. So you have to, based upon this finding, you have to see the tumor is resectable, unresectable. Here, the MCQ is what are the unresectable tracheal neoplasm. Just remember any one, unresectable, unresectable. Just remember the unresectable. So whenever there is a probable grossly positive tracheal resection margin, okay, under metastatic diseases, under resection precludes safe reconstruction. Okay, whenever safe reconstruction is not possible, then it's also an unresectable and adjacent organs. These are the unresectable. So unresectable, what you have to do, you have to give radiotherapy 50 gauge. Okay. So next, whenever it is resectable, okay, you have to see the performance status. If it is poor performance status, again, give radiotherapy only. Okay. So if it is resectable, then you have to go tracheal resection. There are many tracheal principles for tracheal resection. Okay, you have to resect up to 50%, and anterolateral mobilization, you have to do only anterolateral mobilization only. Okay. Okay, posteriorly should not mobilize. You should do only anterolateral mobilization and head forward flexion for 7 days. Okay. Suture head in forward, suture the head in forward flexion for 7 days. Okay. And the laryngeal and hilar release as needed for relief of tension. So next, this is a protocol for your resectable and unresectable. So unresectable radiotherapy, resectable tracheal resection, you can go up to 50%. That is your MCQ. Then you have to come. One term is there is called lymphatic sump of Bory. Okay, what is lymphatic sump of Bory? So where is it? Lymphatic sump of Bory is present. Okay, in the right side of the lung. Okay, the node of the lymphatic sump lie around the bronchus intermedius. On the left side, it is lie around the interlobular fissure. So this is your lymphatic sump of Bory location. So right side, it is present in the bronchus intermedius. Okay, no need to know where is bronchus intermedius. Just to remember this term. So right sided, the sump of Bory is present in bronchus intermedius, and the left side it is present in the interlobar fissure. So sump of Bory is very important. It is a main lymphatic drainage for trachea and all. Okay. Okay. So the next, this is a difference between. This is your difference between invasive mucinous adenocarcinoma, lung carcinoma. It is a difference between the invasive mucinous adenocarcinoma and the non-invasive adenocarcinoma. Okay. So mucinous and non-mucinous. So in this, simply remember. So mucinous, formerly known as mucinous bronchial carcinoma, and this is previously known as non-mucinous bronchial carcinoma. Okay. Okay. Sorry, this is the difference. This is your non-invasive mucinous adenocarcinoma. This is non-mucinous adenocarcinoma in situ. Okay, or minimally invasive adenocarcinoma or lipidic predominant adenocarcinoma. So this is what is the difference between adenocarcinoma and adenocarcinoma in situ? We'll see. So whenever it is invasive mucinous adenocarcinoma, okay, it will be both are present in female and smokers. Okay, the invasive mucinous adenocarcinoma, radiological appearance it shows consolidation, and in case of non-mucinous adenocarcinoma in situ, it shows ground glass opacity. Okay, and what are the cell type is present? The cell type is mucinous is so definitely mucin filled columnar and corporate cell will be present, and in non-mucinous AAS, type 2 pneumocytes or Clara cells will be present. So invasive mucinous adenocarcinoma, what are the phenotypes? Immunohistochemical markers are present. It is CK20 positive. And the non-mucinous AAS is TTF positive. Okay. So your TTF is a thyroid transcription factor. So thyroid transcription factor is present in lung carcinoma, not in thyroid carcinoma. It is important MCQ. So thyroid transcription factor 1 is present in AAS, okay, non-mucinous AAS, and the CK20 is present in positive in invasive mucinous adenocarcinoma. So and the KRAS is frequent in invasive mucinous adenocarcinoma, and EGFR is common in non-mucinous AAS. So simply remember, so CK20 KRAS will be present in invasive, and the TTF1 and the EGFR is present in non-mucinous. Okay, AAS. Okay, so next we come to the lung carcinoma classification. The classification system for lung adenocarcinoma. Okay, adenocarcinoma, the new classification is there. So pre-invasive, minimally invasive, okay, and invasive adenocarcinoma and variants of invasive adenocarcinoma. Okay, so in the pre-invasive lesion, you have to know atypical adenomatous hyperplasia and adenocarcinoma in situ. Okay, AIS. In the minimally invasive adenocarcinoma, same non-mucinous, mucinous are mixed. Or invasive adenocarcinoma, it is lipidic predominant, acinar, papillary, micropapillary. Okay, and the variants of invasive adenocarcinoma only, your invasive mucinous adenocarcinoma is coming. Okay, so just remember the term. And this is a relative risk of lung cancer in smokers. Okay, so who is having highest relative risk means one who stopped the smoking, that is the years of abstinence is 1 to 9 years, having highest risk. Okay, 19.5. Okay, they are more risk than the currently smoked. Okay, in the formerly smoked, okay, the 1 to 9 years, they leave the smoke for if they left the smoke within 10 years, and it is there are more relative risk. The relative risk is very more. Then you come here. So who will be appropriate selection? Who will be the patient will be fit for the pulmonary metastatectomy? So whenever the pulmonary tumor must already be controlled. Okay, and when the patient must be able to tolerate GA. Okay, or potential single lung ventilation and planned pulmonary resection. So when the tumor metastasis is completely resectable, then only you have to go for metastatectomy. And if there is no evidence of extrapulmonary tumor burden, and alternative superior therapy must not be available. There is no other therapy. Okay, superior therapy must be there. Then only you have to do pulmonary metastatectomy. Okay. So next slide is your technique of invasive mediastinal staging. Okay. So here many techniques are there in mediastinal staging. Invasive mediastinal staging, many techniques are there. One is endoscopic surgical. Okay, endoscopic surgical. So endoscopic, many methods are there. Among that, first preferred for mediastinal node staging is endobronchial ultrasound with the transbronchial needle aspiration. Okay. So this is your first preferred for mediastinal node. Then many things are there, and surgical, many things are there. The video assisted mediastinoscopy, TEMLA, DRUMLA. Okay, that's all. You remember the mnemonic for TEMLA. Sorry, full form of TEMLA is a trans-cervical extended mediastinal lymphadenectomy, and VAMLA is a video assisted mediastinal lymphadenectomy. So when the indication, what are the indication for invasive mediastinal staging in lung cancer? Okay, so invasive mediastinal staging in lung cancer is first you have to see a radiographically enlarged mediastinal lymph node should be there. Okay, and the centrally located tumor should be there, N1, and the T tumor is greater than 3 cm. That means that in AJCC 8th classification of lung cancer, it is T2. From T2 only you have to go for invasive mediastinal staging. So that is your main MCQ. Okay, for not for T1 cases. So T2 cases, N1. So T2, N1, Okay, and the enlarged node and the centrally node and the peripheral clinical stage 1 with a non-enlarged but FDG avid metastasis nodes. So FDG avid metastasis nodes. For that also you have to go. So when you have to go for pre-thoracotomy or thoracoscopic biopsy, okay, of station 5 and 6 lymph nodes. So specifically they given in Schwartz. Okay, so indication for this 5 and 6 lymph nodes. So what is 5 and 6 lymph nodes in lung cancer? Is 5 is your subaortic and 6 is your paraortic. Okay, and 7 is your subcarinal. This itself can ask us MCQ. So daily it's given. So what is the nodal stations? So 5 is your subaortic and 6 is your paraortic and 7 is your subcarinal. Okay. So what are the indications? For indications, the criteria for invasive staging met and other mediastinal nodes are negative. So the same criteria and the above, and whenever the other mediastinal nodes or expressions are negative, then you can go for this 5 and 6 lymph nodes. And criteria for enrollment criteria for induction therapy protocol, require pathological confirmation of N2 diseases. So N2 diseases you can go for a try for 5 and 6. And CT, whenever CT shows evidence of metastasis, you can go 5 and 6. Okay, even bulky metastasis, extracapsular spread, not completely resectable, then you go 5 and 6. So why they are telling that 5 and 6 is the 5 and 6 lymph nodes are present, it is mostly unresectable. So that they are particularly explaining about 5 and 6 lymph nodes. When the tissue diagnosis of hilar mass or lymph node causing recurrent laryngeal paralysis. So see, so tissue diagnosis of a hilar mass, whenever recurrent laryngeal paralysis caused by the lymph node enlargement, then also you have to go for 5 and 6 lymph nodes. So important MCQ or the indication for 5 and 6 lymph nodes. So next come your what are circumstances under which lobectomy? We can do lobectomy by video assisted VATS. So VATS lobectomy. What are the criteria? Not criteria. What are the special things needed? Okay, basic criteria circumstances needed is so conditions. In we have to see the pulmonary compromise of the patient. So examples that suppose the patient having poor FeV1 and DLCO or heavy smoker or sleep apnea, recurrent pneumonia is the recent pneumonia is there, then you can go for this VATS procedure. Okay. Okay, and whenever there is patient having some cardiac dysfunctions and extrathoracic malignancy is present. Okay. It's really solitary brain mets from lung cancer or deep pulmonary mets recurring lobectomy, then you can go for VATS. So VATS is your minimal assessment. Okay. So they are explaining this criteria and they are telling that poor physical performance score. That's they are telling your name is called the Zubrad score. The Zubrad score of 2 to 3. Okay. So you have to go for Zubrad score of 2 to 3. Okay. So Zubrad score of 2 to 3 and morbid obesity you can go for VATS and advanced stage age more than 70. Okay. And the vascular problems and the recent or impending major operations or psychological or neurological conditions or immunosuppression or impaired wound healing. Okay, especially recent transplantation done in diabetic patients, you can go for VATS. So simply remember 4 things. Okay, all RS problem, CVS problem, rheumatological, like that. You remember the age more than 70 and the Zubrad score of 2 to 3, 2 or 3 or recent transplantation diabetes. Okay, just remember these 4 things. These go for preferable for VATS. So next important expected MCQs, what are the indications for surgical drainage procedures for lung abscess? So when you have to do lung abscess, when you have to do drainage, so failure of medical therapy, and abscess under tension, increase in size, and the contralateral lung contamination and abscess is here criteria is more than 4 to 6. And whenever the necrotizing infection with multiple hemoptysis, abscess rupture or pneumothorax is there, and the inability evading a cavitating carcinoma, exclude a cavitating carcinoma. Okay. So these are the indications. So then what are the indication? Surgery in lung TB. Okay. The tuberculosis, mycobacterial pulmonary infection. What are the indications for surgery in mycobacterial tuberculosis? Okay. So whenever the complications resulting from previous thoracic surgery to treat tuberculosis, when the failure of medical therapy and for definite diagnosis and complication of pulmonary scarring. Okay. Example, massive hemoptysis, cavernoma. Bronchiectasis, bronchostenosis are present, then you have to go for surgery in case of tuberculosis itself and extrapulmonary thoracic involvement and pleural tuberculosis. So remember pleural tuberculosis, when the pleura is involved, then you have to go for surgery, and a non-tuberculous mycobacterial infection, especially atypical. Okay, you have to go for atypical mycobacterial infection, you go for surgery. So simply remember these three things very important. So whenever the lung complications of the tuberculosis, you have to go for surgery, and extrapulmonary thoracic involvement, you got to go for surgery, and the pleural tuberculosis, you got to go for surgery, and non-tuberculous mycobacterial infection, especially atypical mycobacterial infection, you go to for surgery. So next your treatment, this is no need actually. Okay, this is no need. I think next they are telling about nuclear imaging relevant to the mediastinum. Okay, what are the nuclear imaging relevant to the mediastinum? So there are many methods are there, imaging methods are there. In that, first you have to know about the monoclonal antibodies. So where they are using monoclonal antibodies is this indium-11, so indium-111 and 99M technetium. So they are using monoclonal antibodies, especially for non-small cell lung carcinoma. Okay, non-small cell lung carcinoma, colon, breast, and prostate cancer metastasis. Okay, and the gallium. So gallium, let's remember gallium 67. See the number you have to remember. So gallium is 67 and the indium is 111. Okay, gallium 67, you have to go for lymphoma, non-small cell lung carcinoma, and melanoma. So remember, say LMN. Okay, L for lymphoma, M for melanoma, and N for non-small cell lung carcinoma. So these are the use of gallium. So gallium is LMN. Okay, and you have to go for a sestamibi scan. You already know where is the sestamibi scan is used. It's a general revision only. The medullary thyroid carcinoma and the non-functional papillary or follicular thyroid carcinoma, Hurther cell carcinoma, or parathyroid adenoma carcinoma, where sestamibi scan is used. And the thallium, the number is 201. Okay, so thallium is same like sestamibi. The indications are same in sestamibi. And MABG scan for pheochromocytoma, neuroblastoma, and fluorodeoxygen FTG 18. Okay, FTG 18, as you know already, same condition only. So here we are continuing about the chest wall mass. Okay, how to, these are the systemic approach for evaluating a chest wall mass for which the diagnosis is not unequal. This is not necessary actually. Okay, so just to remember a term. So when you are going for some chest wall mass, okay, so CT, you are doing CT MRI, both diagnosis is not clear, then you have to go for biopsy. In the biopsy, if the tumor comes like osteosarcoma, rhabdomyosarcoma, non-rhabdomyosarcoma, or peanut or Ewing sarcoma, okay, then you have to go for preoperative chemotherapy and white cell rejection. In case of non-rhabdomyosarcoma, you see here non-rhabdomyosarcoma, here non-rhabdomyosarcoma. If myosarcoma comes, then you have to go for chemotherapy. If non-rhabdomyosarcoma comes, then you have to directly go for wide surgical excision. So just to remember this one term. Okay, non-rhabdomyosarcoma. So if myo comes, you can go for chemo. Okay, so plain rhabdomyosarcoma comes, then you have to go for wide local excision. Okay. Then one simple one-liner. So most common mediastinal tumor in children and adults. Okay. So neurogenic tumor. So this is your MCQ point. After many controversy, the revision is feeling that neurogenic tumor is the most common mediastinal tumor in children and adult. Okay, neurogenic tumor versus in the posterior mediastinum. Okay. So here is your sign and symptoms of suggest of various diagnosis in the setting of mediastinal mass. Okay. So here your germ cell, every tumor you already know. Okay, this lymphoma in any compartment, thymoma is most common in the anterior, and the mediastinal granuloma is in the middle. So this is a germ cell tumor. This germ cell tumor, okay, is mostly present in the anterior compartment. So germ cell tumor looks different. So I'm telling that germ cell tumor is present in the anterior compartment mostly, and it's what are the history findings are present in the male, young, testicular mass will be there, and elevated levels of HCG or alpha beta. If the history they gave like this, it is a germ cell tumor. In the mediastinum mass is very rare actually. So this is a picture showing massive thymolipoma. Okay, so thymolipoma. So these are the neurogenic tumor classification of the neurogenic tumors of the mediastinum. Okay, neurogenic tumor of mediastinum. Okay, so this is the origin for the tumor: nerve sheath, the ganglion cell, paraganglionic cell. So if a tumor is originated from the nerve sheath, then they are dividing into benign and malignant for all cancers. So just to see the malignants, okay, the Sundar and benign. So the nerve sheath tumor are neurophybrosarcoma, and the ganglionic cells are ganglion neuroblastoma and neuroblastoma. So see, neuroblastoma is from the origin is from the ganglionic cell, and the paraganglionic cells are a chemodectoma and the malignant pheochromocytoma. Okay. So then they are telling about fluoral efficiency. What are the transitive fluoral efficiency? So we able to know transitive pleural effusion, but this is the forgetting points. So all of the causes of transitive pleural effusion, just to remember this superior vena obstruction and Fontan procedure. I will tell Fontan procedure when we come to the cardiac surgery. So it's a sarcoidosis. So this and all transitive only. Okay, and what are the, these are the pathogenesis of empyema. Okay, so most common pathogenesis is, what is the most common cause of empyema is contamination from the source contagious to the pleural space. That is the most common cause. Okay. The next etiological factor in the acute mediastinitis. No need. Then you see about the composition of the chyle. Very, very important. Okay, chyle composition, basic question. So chyle composition. So you have to remember one thing: the electrolyte is similar to the plasma level. That you have to remember. Okay, electrolyte is similar to the plasma level, and this ATG, okay, prothrombin and fibrinogen. This and all greater than 25% of plasma concentration. Okay, just remember these two terms. Okay, so electrolyte is similar to your plasma level, and ATG, prothrombin and fibrinogen is greater than 25%. Okay, that is 1/4. 1/4 is higher than the plasma concentration. Okay, so this is your treatment decision algorithm for the management of malignant pleural effusion. On it actually. So just to see if it is if you are the patient comes for the management of malignant pleural effusion, so you have to identify the CPR decubitus film. Okay, if it is a loculated fluid or trapped lung, then you have to go for the pleural catheter, indwelling pleural catheter ICD tubes. That's the free flowing with the lung with the full lung expansion. Then, if the patient having excellent performance, you have to go for VATS pleurotaxis. If the patient has poor performance, then you have to go for again ICD. So these are the again composition of these are the differentiation between the mesothelioma from adenocarcinoma. So what are the difference with this? This is also very important. What are the difference between the mesothelioma and adenocarcinoma? So your adenocarcinoma will be positive for the CEA. CEA will be positive in adenocarcinoma, and vimentin and low molecular weight cytokeratins will be positive for this mesothelioma. Okay, so vimentin, low molecular weight is positive. Low molecular weight cytokeratins will be positive for this mesothelioma, and the adenocarcinoma CEA will be positive. Okay, so how the mesothelioma is there? Electron microscopic features of mesothelioma. Just see this long, and the adenocarcinoma will be short. Okay, this long sinus villi and adenocarcinoma will be short straight villi. Okay, this is sinus villi, this straight villi. Okay. So next is the algorithm of the management of the chylothorax. This is also very important. So what do you do for chylothorax management? So if you see the height, let's see the thoracentesis, you are doing thoracentesis and confirm the diagnosis, and we are putting the chest tube. After putting the chest tube, you have to mainly go for conservative management, NPO, chest tube suction, and the central hyper alimentation. Okay, you have to give a low fatty diet and a high protein diet. Okay, and wait for 2 weeks. You have to wait for 2 weeks. 2 weeks you have to wait, at least wait for 2 weeks. So what is the contraindication for wait for 2 weeks? What are the contraindicated point is, if the high output persists more than 50 ml per day, then you have to do the yearly surgical ligation of the thoracic duct may be considered. Okay, so if you are seeing the daily output, if it is more than 50 ml per day, okay, yearly surgical ligation of the thoracic duct may be considered. Okay. So then you see here you see wait for 2 weeks. Then if it is diagnosed to be malignant chylothorax after the investigations and all, if it is malignant, then you go for radiation therapy. Okay, and the drainage decreases. Okay, less than 250 ml per day. Okay, then you have to go for. Actually, this is they're giving long. Actually, this is more than 500, I think. Okay, the more than 50 they given. It's more than 500. So if it is drainage decreases, the drainage decreases to less than 250 ml per day. Okay, and you have to continue for another 1 week. Still, the drainage stops. Remove the chest tube. If the drainage still persists, if the medically stable, go for thoracotomy. Otherwise, medically unstable, give a pleural peritoneal shunt. And if non-malignant drainage still persists, is more than 500 ml per day, then he will give thoracotomy. Okay, duct ligation, mass ligation, decorticectomy, and pleurectomy. Okay, these 4 things you have to do: duct ligation, mass ligation, decortication, and pleurectomy. Okay, pleurectomy. These are things you have to do in case of non-malignant drainage procedures. So these are the diagrams showing bronchogenic cyst. Okay, then come to the this is from your suggestion. Then this is from your suggestion chest wall chapter. Okay, this is your suggestion starting. So one or two pictures I have missed. It is self-explanatory only. You can read it. So this is your chest X-ray and the CT picture showing bronchogenic cyst. Okay, and this is your bronchopulmonary sequestrations. Okay, this is your CECT showing bronchopulmonary sequestration, and this is your bronchogenic cyst. Okay, and this is your various type of cestual deformities. Okay, this is normal chest. This is this pectus excavatum. The excavatum is your anterior projection. The excavatum is your dipping. Dipping will be there, inward projection, and the carneatum is outer projections. So remember a car. The car front like it will be there now. So in the car, okay, I remember like this. Okay, so just remember carneatum. It will come anterior projection. So and it's a Poulter. So Poulter pigeon breast. Okay, it is S-shaped, and the Poland syndrome. You know, you see here the one side of the costochondral cartilages, rib cartilages, and the muscles. Everything will be absent. Okay, and this is your cleft sternum. Cleft sternum, the manubrium sternum will be absent. Okay, manubrium sternum central part will be absent. And one more, this is that what are the procedures related to the chest wall deformity? The procedure related to chest wall deformity. Procedure related to the hello.
One is Ravich, another one is Nas.
Ravich is the laparoscope, minimal invasive. Okay.
Minimal invasive.
Minimal invasive. Nas is your open procedure. Okay. So Nas is your open procedure, and the Ravich is your minimal invasive procedure, and one more mesh they are keeping. Okay, that mesh name is called Marvelous mesh. So Marvelous mesh they will ask so. So there they will use a Marvelous mesh. Marvelous mesh they will keep for especially for pectus excavatum repair. So next comes to your classification of the tumor of the chest wall. So which is more benign or malignant? So malignant tumor is more in case of chest wall. So among that bone tumors. So chest wall, many commoners are they are divided into bone tumors, soft tissue tumors. This is self-explanatory. Just to remember one thing that what's Askins tumor. So Askins tumor is a primitive neuroectodermal tumor. Okay, it's a primitive neuroectodermal tumor of this comes under the category of nerve. It's a malignant nerve tumor of the chest wall. Okay, it's Askins tumor. Just remember. And these are the tests given in this question also expected. They will given the clinical scenario and they will ask. So these are the tests to diagnose with the thoracic outlet syndrome. So this is your right. Okay, just remember this is your right, and this is your AdSense test, and this is your Roos test. Okay, so right, AdSense, and Roos test. Okay, the C and the D both are Roos test. Okay, so you're keeping the arm up above is right. Okay, and below is AdSense. So next to thymoma staging is a thymoma staging. Mostly they will ask Masoka staging. Okay, Masoka staging for thymoma. But here the thymoma staging what they given in Sebastian they are given. So you have to read only. So it is not TNM. Okay, it is. So you have to this is TNM 8, TNM only 8th AJCC. So you have to remember this thing. So here you see the T1A. So T1AB. So A is encapsulated or uncapsulated with or without extension to the mediastinal fat. Okay, and the B is where mediastinal pleura. Extension to the mediastinal. So they will directly ask pleural extension is T1B, and the pericardial extension is T2. The pleural mediastinal pleural extension is a T1B, and pericardial extension is a T2. And the resectable. What are the resectable tumors is lung. Okay, superior vena cava. Okay, unresectable is aorta, arch vessel, main pulmonary artery, myocardium, trachea, and esophagus.
The expected here is that phrenic nerve they will ask.
Phrenic nerve, yes. Phrenic nerve. Phrenic nerve, lung. What is that? Lung also T3, na? Lung also phrenic nerve involvement is T3, I think.
Yeah, phrenic nerve is always resectable. One side phrenic nerve we can resect always.
Yeah, is T3 in lung carcinoma also is T3, resectable. Or the resectable structures are T3 and the unresectable structures are T4. So what are the resectable structures? Lung, brachiocephalic, and superior vena cava, phrenic nerve. Okay. So unresectable structures, especially aorta, arch vessels, main pulmonary artery, myocardium, trachea, esophagus and all is a T4. Just
Remember esophagus. I think esophagus we can dissect.
Yeah. So remember so without any extension only encapsulated and uncapsulated is T1A and mediastinal dura is T1B and pericardium is T2 and the resectable sexes are T3, especially feeding now, and the unresected sexes are T4. Remember esophagus also. And what is the N category? Is N category. So N1 is your anterior perithymic nerves. Okay. So anterior. This is your anterior perithymic nodes. And N2 is a deep intrathoracic cervical nodes. And M1A is a separate pleural or pericardial nodules. And M1B is intraparenchymal or distal organ passages. Okay. So this is only. That's it. Then. Then we'll go to the next one. Next, I will take cardiology. So, if any figure, any diagram is missed, just inform me. That is not mandatory. That's why I didn't put. This and all Bailey one. Bailey one, no need to read. So, So Seviston, this is our figure 59.4. Okay. So 59.4, what they are telling is they are telling about complete AV canal defect. First defect, they are discussing about various. After this call, now we see about congenital heart disease. This is our congenital heart disease, Seviston congenital heart disease. Okay. So congenital heart disease, the first syndrome we'll see about AV canal defect. Okay. So AV canal defect. So these are cardiomegaly and increased pulmonary vascular markings in a patient with the AV canal defect. Okay. So number second, then is your what are the classification for aortopulmonary septal defect? Okay. Aortopulmonary septal defect, that is again what are the classification for aortopulmonary septal defect? They are giving three types, type 1 to 3. So it is a figure number 59.7. Okay. So aortopulmonary septal defect. Number second is aortopulmonary septal defect. So aortopulmonary septal is type 1. What is a type 1? Here you see. So the aorta and the pulmonary artery, they both are connected by a defect in the posterior wall of the ascending arch, ascending aortic wall. Okay. So it is a posterior wall of ascending aorta. Okay. Then aortopulmonary window means there is some connection between the aorta and the pulmonary artery. So how they are connecting? So we are the posterior wall of ascending arch aorta is one type 1, and when there is a cephalic connection between the aorta, okay, and the pulmonary artery, then it's called type 2. And when the type 3 is when there is a posterolateral, okay, ascending aorta with the right pulmonary artery. Whenever the aorta is connecting with the right pulmonary artery, okay, then it is called third type. Okay, especially the defect in the posterolateral part of the aorta. So type 1 I am coming, type 1 in the posterior wall of the ascending aorta, and type 2 is cephalic, and the type 3 is posterolateral between ascending aorta and the right pulmonary artery. Okay, number second, I'll come to your Rastelli classification. So Rastelli classification is for AV canal defect. So AV canal defect is otherwise called AV septal defect or endocardial cushion defect. Okay, so this is very right actually you have to just concentrate what I'm telling. Okay, so Rastelli classification here, the Rastelli classification for AV canal defect. So this diagram shows normal valves, and P is your partial AV canal. Okay, and C is your complete AV canal. In the complete AV canal, it is divided into three types: Rastelli A, Rastelli B, Rastelli C. So ABC is your MCQs. What are the AB? C itself divided into A, B, C. Okay, what is A, what is B, what is C? Okay, rationally A, this that is MCQ. So first is in A. So A, what there is that whenever the superior leaflet, okay, or the caudal support of the valve, okay, is attached to the left side of the ventricular septum. Okay, so the diagram is you could not able to depict in the diagram. Just to concentrate. So, so this is a leaflet. Okay, leaflet and the caudae is mainly towards the left side of the ventricular septum. Okay, and the B is okay. Whenever the straddling and shared caudal support on both sides, you go to both the right and left. Okay, you go to both right and left. Yes, left also is the right connection also there. And floating at left superior leaflet and the caudal support mainly on the right side of the ventricular septum. So whenever the term floating is come, it indicates your Raschel is type C and the right side is Raschel type C. So remember, Raschel A is mainly to left side of ventricular septum. So Raschel B is the support mainly towards both the side. Okay, B for both. Remember, B for both and A for left side and C for right side. So next comes just to remember the term itself. This is Collett, Edward, and Van Praag classification for persistent truncus arteriosus. So PTA is for persistent truncus arteriosus. So it's then you remember the name. It's Collett, Edward classification and Van Praag classification. It's for persistent truncus arteriosus. So you are going deep into this Collett, Edward classification. So what is that telling that the truncus arteriosus is something related to the pulmonary artery. Okay, the pathology related to the pulmonary artery. So what is the type 1, type 2, type 3, type 4? Collett and Edwards, persistent truncus arteriosus. Mainly figure 59.15. Okay, figure 59.15. Here the telling. So type 1. So type 1 is looks normal. So main pulmonary trunk is coming. The main pulmonary trunk divides into right and left pulmonary artery. Okay. So what is the type 2? The type 2, the pulmonary artery is arising from the aorta. Okay, arising from the ascending aorta, and it's very close. The origin of the both right and pulmonary, this is very close. In the type 3, it is distant. That is a difference. So arising from the aorta, and type 4, it is not from aorta. Okay, the type 4 is not from aorta. That is a thing. Just remember the Van Praag. No need to remember the Van Praag. Just remember the name. So Collett, Edward, and the Van Praag is for PTA. Okay, so and this next one is Blalock, Taussig, and Beatrice. So what is Beatrice? Okay, so Beatrice we will give many conditions. Tricuspid atresia. So it is a connection between the systemic artery and pulmonary artery. Okay, systemic artery and the pulmonary artery. The systemic artery gets Blalock, Taussig, and they are taking the systemic artery as left subclavian artery and they connected to the left pulmonary artery. So left. So Blalock, Taussig shunt is we can go for tricuspid atresia and or tetralogy of Fallot. In many cyanotic heart disease, we will use this shunt. Okay, all cyanotic heart disease will start with the T mostly. Okay, anything start with C, then it is your cyanotic heart disease. Okay, so this is your Blalock, Taussig shunt. BT shunt is connection between the subclavian artery and the pulmonary artery. Okay, just remember. Then figure 59.22. So figure 99.22, they are different approaches for the tetralogy of Fallot procedures. Okay, this is a long right ventriculotomy. Okay, this is no need actually. The classical transventricular approach. So this diagram is no needed. Mostly they won't ask. And this is your mini transannular incision, the transarterial and transpulmonary approach. So here is your transventricular approach. Okay, where you give a long right ventriculotomy. Okay, here is your transarterial transpulmonary approach. Many approaches are there for tetralogy of Fallot that they are telling, and this is your angiogram showing during balloon atrial septostomy. Okay, just remember. So the arrow depicts the inflated balloon. This is your balloon atrial septostomy. This is your tetralogy of Fallot. So tetralogy of Fallot, what is there? There are protocol for the tetralogy of ferret. The tetralogy of ferret one repair is there. That's called RVS repair. That they will ask when we'll do RVS repair. They will ask. So right ventricular infundibulum sparing strategy. That is your RVIS repair. Okay, right ventricular infundibulum sparing strategy. So just remember anything. Anywhere you see more than 4 kilogram, the patient's weight is more than 4 kilogram, then you have to go for RVIS. Otherwise, you have to go for this SPS procedure. Okay, you have to go for the SPS. This SPS. What is the SPS means? The SPS is systemic to pulmonary shunt. What we have seen before, that the BT shunt, Fontaine shunt, Watterson pots, modified Balalactosic shunt. So many shunts are there. So systemic to portal circulation, you have to go whenever there is a less than 4 kilogram, and whenever there is a more than 4 kilogram, we can go for RVS procedure. The RVS is right ventricular infundibulum sparing strategy. So just see when the patient is facing a tetralogy of ferret and he is symptomatic. Okay, he is symptomatic and I see the weight. After symptomatic, you have to always see the weight. Weight is very important for the pediatric patients. So always see the weight. The weight is more than 4 kilogram, then we can directly go for RVS. Okay, if it is less than 4, then we consider the SPS. So even asymptomatic also, you also consider weight. Even if it's more than 3 months and more than 4 kilogram, then you have to go for RVS. So both 4 kilogram, they're directly going to RVIS. So rest of the thing you have to go for systemic pulmonary circulation. So these are expected. Okay, suggestion they give, and they are giving the 5 basic figure 59.28. They are giving 5 basic coronary artery configuration. So no need. So here you see just one condition is called what is the TGA. TGA is a transposition of great arteries. Okay, here they are doing surgery. It's called arterial switch operation. Atrial switch operation. Okay, they are having 2 named procedures are there. The one is Mustard, and another one is Senning's. So Mustard and Senning procedure is atrial switch operation, which are doing in transmission of great arteries. So next figure 59.34. Okay, they're just telling about the coarctation of aorta. So coarctation of aorta, just to see treatment of the coarctation. No need to see this diagram. Just they are telling this is infantile. Okay, this is infantile. This is preductal. Okay, or this is adult. This is adult coagulation of aorta. Okay. Just to see what are the treatment options for the coagulation of aorta is, most commonly they are doing resection and primary repair. Okay, so they will do the resection and repair. Okay, the resection and reanastomosis they will do. Okay, resection and repair they will do. But what are the other procedures they are doing is, okay, mostly they will follow this end-to-end anastomosis, resection and end-to-end anastomosis. What are the other procedures they are doing is patch augmentation they are doing, and the subclavian flap aortoplasty they are doing, and the extended resection with the primary anastomosis. These are the various techniques they are using for the coagulation of aorta. Among that, this is subclavian flap aortoplasty. The subclavian flap aortoplasty, okay, it is called Wald-Hashens method. Okay, this is your Wald-Hashens method. Okay, this is your Wald-Hashens method. What is Wald-Hashens methods used for the coagulation of aorta is a subclavian artery flap aortoplasty. Subclavian flap aortoplasty is where one Hashens aortoplasty. The next comes your congenital valvular aortic stenosis. So congenital valvular aortic stenosis, the procedure of choice is a Ross procedure. Okay, what is a Ross procedure? They will ask ROSS, Ross procedure. So Ross procedure is a pulmonary autograft. Okay, so pulmonary autograft aortic root replacement. Pulmonary autograft aortic root replacement is simply pulmonary valve. You are replacing the pulmonary valve to the aortic valve. Okay, so replacement of pulmonary valve with the aortic valve. So here the problem is in the aorta. What they are doing is they are taking the pulmonary valve. Okay, they are taking the pulmonary valve and they are shifting it to the aortic side. Okay, and they are replacing the pulmonary valve by using graft. Okay, so using pulmonary valve by using graft, and they are shifting this pulmonary valve to the aorta. Okay, this is called the Ross procedure. The Ross procedure, replacement of pulmonary valve with the valve, replacement of pulmonary valve with the valve conduit. So interrupted aortic arch. What is interrupted aortic arch? Then we come to the interrupted aortic arch. The classification of interrupted aortic arch. So there are 3 classifications. The type ABC. So this also they can ask what is the type A. So everything is based upon that left subclavian artery. It's figure 59.36. So everything is based upon this left subclavian artery. So left subclavian artery. So yeah, if the interruption of the aortic arch is post after the left subclavian, then it is called A. Okay. And it is in between the left subclavian and the common carotid. See, so left common carotid and the left subclavian. In between the interruption is there, then it is called type B. Okay, and this type C is proximal to LSA. So once again telling, the type A is distal to LSA, and the type B is in between LC and LSA, and the type C is proximal to LSA. Okay, and this is your Balalak-Taussig shunt. This is your modified Balalak-Taussig shunt. So what is the difference between normal BT shunt and the modified BT shunt? Normal BT shunt, the difference is a connection between the. Okay, I already told what is BT shunt. Classic right BT shunt is a connection between the subclavian artery with the pulmonary artery. Okay, so here they are using the normal autograft. Okay, some of the patient own vessel they are taking, but here they are taking some graft or conduit. Okay, modified, in the modified they will use some conduit. Okay, if they are same, they are using between the aorta and the main pulmonary trunk, then it is called the central. Okay, central right modified BT shunt. Okay, this is a second MCQ. Then the third MCQ is what is water shunt. The water shunt is from the aorta and the right pulmonary artery. Okay, aorta and the right pulmonary artery. Okay, what is the path shunt? The path shunt is same from the. So water shunt is from ascending aorta to right pulmonary artery. So path shunt is from the descending aorta to left pulmonary artery. Okay, just remember about the thing. So remember aorta to pulmonary artery. Okay, so aorta to right pulmonary artery. The aorta to left pulmonary artery, and it is called the path. So water shunt is from right pulmonary artery, path is to the left pulmonary artery, and the right pulmonary artery and the right subclavian artery, then it is called water shunt. Okay. So the BT shunt. So next come to your Norwood. Okay. So this is clear. What is BT shunt? What is modified BT shunt? What is water shunt? What is paths? Is clear or I explain again?
ஓகே இதெல்லாம் எங்கேயோ எப்பயோ படிச்சது, இப்பதான் ஞாபகம் வருது. இதை பார்த்தா நம்ம கற்பனையில படிச்சது நேர்ல பாக்குற மாதிரி தெரியுது. ஆனா நிறைய இது கார்டியோவாஸ்குலர் இதுல ரொம்ப கஷ்டமான சப்ஜெக்டா இருக்கும் போல.
அண்டர்ஸ்டாண்ட் பண்ணவே கிடையாது.
Figure 59.41. So 59.41 it is they're telling about HLHS. HLHS is hypoplastic left heart syndrome. Okay, hypoplastic left heart syndrome. Here they are used. Just remember one term is a Norwood procedure. Norwood procedure they are using in HLHS. Okay, just remember Norwood for HLHS, hypoplastic left heart syndrome. Then where is it? Then they are telling about named procedures only. Then what is a Glean shunt? The Glean shunt is from SVC to pulmonary artery. Okay, so SVC to pulmonary artery is a Glean shunt, and next comes your Fontaine. So Fontaine is IVC to pulmonary artery. Finished. Okay. Just remember the term. So Glean. So just remember the term Norwood procedure. So Norwood procedure is for HLHS. Okay. And what are the other procedures they are using? So what are the other procedures they are using to creating the shunt is Glean shunt. Glean shunt is directly they will ask what is Glean shunt. It is only SVC to PA, pulmonary artery. And what is Font addition? It is IVC to pulmonary artery. So what is Ebstein's anomaly? Ebstein's anomaly is a tricuspid valve bulging into the right ventricle. Another tricuspid valve is bulging. Okay, is bulging into the right ventricle, then it is called Ebstein's anomaly. So what are the surgical procedure they are using for Ebstein's anomaly? Is Carpenter's method. Okay, Carpenter's method they are using, or Carpenter's method they are using for Ebstein's anomaly. Okay, so then disorders of the vascular aortic arch disorders. They are telling about pulmonary artery sling. So pulmonary artery, what is pulmonary artery sling? It is a left pulmonary artery arising from the right pulmonary artery. Okay, that is vascular pulmonary artery sling. So sling always go for surgery. So sling always go for surgery even in asymptomatic also, because why? Because it will cause tracheal stenosis and it will cause tracheal fibrosis. Okay, tracheal stenosis it will cause. So that in order to prevent, you have to always go for surgery in case of pulmonary artery sling. Okay. So this finished your congenital heart disease. Then comes to your myocardial infarction. So acute heart disease. So then you go to acute heart disease. So acute heart disease. First they are telling about the anatomical architecture of the coronary arteries. This is the branches of the coronary arteries. So left main coronary artery. Okay, is divided into the left LAD, circumflex coronary, and the ramus intermedius. Okay, the ramus intermedius. Okay, and the left anterior descending LAD is divided into the diagonal artery, septal perforatus, and the circumflex. The circumflex artery, see the circumflex artery is divided into the obtuse marginal. Okay, and the left posterolateral. Obtuse marginal, left posterolateral. Okay, circumflex, and this right coronary artery gives to acute marginal arteries. These are the acute marginal arteries. Acute marginal, posterior descending, and right posterolateral. Okay, so right posterolateral, this comes again. So just remember, acute marginal is from the right coronary artery. This acute marginal artery. Okay, and this is your obtuse marginals. Okay, obtuse marginals. Obtuse marginal is from the circumflex coronary artery. Okay, and this is your diagonal arteries is from the LAD. Okay, this they will confuse. So diagonal is from LAD. Okay, and circumflex coronary is obtuse marginal is from circumflex coronary, and acute marginal is from right coronary. Okay. So next comes your unique feature of the coronary blood flow. The coronary blood flow is auto-regulated over wide pressure ranges. The blood flow is 0.7 to 0.9 ml per kilo per gram. Okay, 0.7 to 0.9 per gram myocardium per minute. Okay, blood flow. So 75% oxygen extraction is there. And the coronary sinus is the most deoxygenated bed in the body, most respected MCQ. Where is in the body, where is the most deoxygenated bed is present? Most deoxygenated bed is present in the coronary sinus of the heart. Coronary sinus blood is the most deoxygenated blood in the body. Okay. And there is 4 to 7-fold increase in flow with the increase in demand. And 60% blood flow occurs during diastole. So heart blood flow occurs during diastole. How many percentage? 60%. Okay. So this is a sequel of the coronary artery disease. What is the sequel of coronary artery disease? This you can read self-explanatory only, and you can read this abnormal equines present, bradycardia, and weak thready pulses. Okay. So when the weak thready pulse is present, it is indicative of ventricular beats is there. Ectopical ventricular beats is present, and the heart third heart sound is present in the elevated left ventricular filling pressures and the CHF. Okay. The congestive heart failure is there. Then it will have the S3, and the S4 is present in acute and chronic CAD. CAD, S4 will be present. Heart failure, S3 will be present. So whenever there is a ischemic papillary muscles ruptured, then you see the mitral regurgitant heart murmurs. Okay, and the ESM is present in aortic stenosis, which contribute to coronary ischemia, and the holosystolic murmur is in the VST. Okay, and the manifestation of CHF, which is other RALs, right epidemic, right abdominal tenderness ascites, and marked peripheral and presacral edema. Okay, and what is stress test related to the coronary artery diseases? Okay, what are the different stress tests? The 3 stress tests is only exercise stress test, and another one is exercise and pharmacological SPECT perfusion imaging. Okay, and the third one is exercise and pharmacological STEX echocardiography. So first you see exercise stress test and exercise and pharmacological SPECT perfusion imaging. So they are using SPECT. Okay, then there you see here echocardiography. Third one is echocardiography. Okay, so when exercise stress test, what they are doing? So they are doing the Bruce protocol. They are following the Bruce protocol. Okay, So they are following the Bruce protocol. The Bruce protocol, what they are telling is a 5 3-minute bouts of treadmill exercise. Okay. So you have to go 3-minute treadmill exercise for 5 times. Okay, 5 times you have to do, and it determines the ischemic threshold. And what is when will it tell the test is completed? When the patient getting 12 metabolic equivalents of analgesic condition. Okay. So we already see the met value already see. Okay, what is 1 met? What is 4 met? Anyone can say? What is 1 met? What is 4 met?
Simply sitting, yeah, 1 met.
Very good. Simply sitting is 1 met.
We are doing
4 met
daily.
is yeah,
4 met stairs.
yeah,
Or
stairs.
2 flights of stairs.
2 flights of stairs. Okay, that is then further the 12 met equivalents of energy expenditure needed for the complete test.
10 met is this one. 10 is playing and all 10 mets swimming.
Yeah, 10 met is tennis.
10 is playing.
So you see the exercise value, you see the energy value. They will make to go in the treadmill in that high speed. Okay.
Actually, they follow mostly the heart rate only. They to 180 beats, 170, 180 beats. That is only their this one. For at that beat heart rate, they will assess how is the ECG changes and all. Okay.
So then another test is exercise and pharmacological spectral perfusion imaging. Okay, is very good for simultaneous evaluation of perfusion and function. Both function and perfusion it will source. Okay, and it is higher sensitivity than the exercise test. Okay, but its limitation is we have to it's a long procedure time, and its cost is very high, and the radiation exposure will be there. So what is exercise and the pharmacological stress echocardiography? Echocardiography in that it is a higher sensitivity than the exercise. This is also higher specificity and sensitivity exercise test. Okay, but it is comparable value with the dopamine test. Okay. So it's only important MCE is which is test is best to identification of structural cardiac abnormalities. Okay, then it's an exercise and pharmacological stress echocardiography. Okay, it will also tell your structural cardiac abnormalities also. Okay, in spite of the perfusion also. Okay, so not that much important. So then I will go to the book. So just marking your book. I will take today class. I will start shortlist till otherwise I will. Hello. Today I will take complete class. Okay. Okay or
okay. Okay. So you anyway you have take importantly. No, we can do. Revision.
Okay. Really important. Okay. So this is a table 60.1 we already see. Already seen the branches of the coronary arteries. Okay. So here they're telling that. So what is your left coronary? The left coronary artery arises from left coronary sinus. Okay, which is present posteriorly. Okay, left coronary sinus is present posteriorly. Just remember the vagus nerve mnemonic LERP. So left vagus nerve is present anteriorly, but here the left coronary artery arises posteriorly. Okay, here is ulta for vagus nerve. Okay, that coronary artery is origins. So LAD. So LAD is considered the most important surgical vessel because it supplies more than 50% of the LV mass. So LAD is your important vessel, and most of the interventricular septum. So we already see the ramus intermedius. So ramus intermedius is the branch of. So ramus intermedius is the branch of. See here, left main coronary artery. Okay, ramus intermedius is the branch of left main coronary artery. Is used to designate a dominant coronary vessel that arises from the occasional trifurcation of the LCA. Okay. So this branch can be intramyocardial and difficult to locate at times. So this they can ask what is a ramus intermedius. Okay. So it is occasionally arise from the trifurcation of LCA. Okay. So the AV node artery arises from the RCA in approximately 90% of the patients. So AV nodal artery is arises from the RCA. 90%. The SCA node is arises from the proximal. It also arises from the RCA only. So both AV node and SCA node arise from the RCA. So AV node is 90% from the RCA and SCA node is 50% from the RCA. So what is resistance vessels? So all the epicaudal conductance vessels and the septal perforators from the LAD give rise to multitude of branches named resistance vessels. Not that much important. So this is a unique feature of coronary vascular blood flow. Already saw. So next comes to your pathogenesis of your MI. Okay, that is your here they're telling in page number 1682. They're telling more than 90% of the patient with a stable IHD, that is SAH3, have advanced coronary atherosclerosis caused by the fixed obstruction. Okay, that atherosclerotic plaque can be concentric or eccentric. The eccentric is 75%. Okay, eccentric is 75%. So they are here they're telling that is called 90% is reduction in the luminal diameter resulting in resting angina. Okay, so this they can expect MCQ. And what is the significant stenosis? When is a significant stenosis? You have to say. Okay, what is the lumen? How many percentage of lumen it should be decreased, and how many percent of cross-sectional diameter should be decreased? 70% and more than 90% of the cross-sectional area. Okay, cross-sectional area more than 90 and more than 70% of the diameter is stenosed, and it is called a significant stenosis. Okay, it is given the Bailey. Okay, so. How do the ischemic heart disease patient will present? Mainly we have the two modes. One is a stable angina and another one is a acute coronary syndrome. Okay, these are the two terms. Acute coronary syndrome having three processes. This having three inclusions. That is, one is STEMI, another one is NSTEMI, and another one is unstable angina. Okay.
Okay.
Here the study is telling why study. So why study is telling that 65% of women with the ischemia present with atypical symptoms. Okay. So at least 40% of the ventricular mass must be involved for the cardiogenic shock to occur. Okay. So next comes your diagnostic testing in case of MI. The diagnostic testing in case of MI. So levels of creatine kinase, okay, CKMB, and trop A, trop T is assessed at least 6 to 12 hours apart. Okay, so elevated BNP and the CRP suggest worst outcome. So BRP, CRP elevated is worst outcome. Okay, and in the ECG, this is indicates your stable ischemic heart disease. Tend to have worse prognosis if they have the following abnormalities and the resting ECG. Okay, so evidence of prior MI, or especially Q wave in the multiple leads, or an R wave in V1. Okay, R wave in the either Q wave or R wave in the V1, it indicating a posterior infarction. Okay, and the persistent ST-T wave inversions, okay, particularly in V1 to V3, and left bundle branch block or bivascular block or third degree AV block and ventricular arrhythmias or LVD hypertrophy. These are the things indicate worse prognosis. Okay, this they want to ask is medical related. We'll go surgical related. Okay, and let's come to the page number 1684. 1684, here they're telling that what are the exercise and the pharmacological stress nuclear myocardial, the nuclear medicine they are using. Okay, they are using a technetium 99M. Okay, also generally used. Generally using technetium 99M and thallium 201. Okay, so technetium 99M and thallium 201. Okay, the both are they are using technetium 99M. Okay, and thallium 201. This I think they are using on the echocardiography. The resting left ventricular ejection fraction. In echo, we will see the ejection fraction. Echo is 35. Okay, it's associated with the annual mortality rate of 3% per year. Next comes your page number 1685. So 1685. So what are the multi-detector CT? Okay, multi-detector CT. Okay, in case of coronary artery disease. Okay, to detect CAD to inform planning of grafting. Okay. So this is very important. So you have to CT angiography is very much important before doing any surgery. So coronary CT angiography are now provide high quality images of the coronary arteries. The coronary artery. That's it. And which is the gold standard for diagnosis of CAD is coronary catheterization. Okay. So for the coronary catheterization, they are telling two studies is a cash study, Bari study. So these are the image they are telling left coronary angiogram showing hemodynamically severe lesions in the LAD. See LAD. LAD is this is your LAD and the circumflex artery. Okay. LAD circumflex artery. This is your LAD and the circumflex artery. And this is your here significant lesion, right coronary artery. Okay. This is your critical left main stem. Okay, left main stem. So these three are very important. Okay, this is your left sider, right sider, and the left main stem. Okay, the three angiogram finding they will ask. Okay, they will ask us a picture question. Okay, and we have to know about FFR. What is FFR? So FFR is a fractional flow reserve. It used to provide information about the physiological effect of the stenosis. Okay, so what is significant FFR? FFR below 0.73 is considered to be ischemia producing lesion. Just remember, is FFR below 0.75 is considered to be ischemia producing lesion. Okay, and what is the role of intravascular ultrasonography? IVES in case of MI is so in veterinary lesion of LCA and IVES of minimal luminal diameter of 2.8 or a minimum luminal area of 6 millimeters square suggest physiological significant lesion. Okay, so then hybrid imaging are there. This is PET and CT or SPECT and CT, allowing combined anatomy and functional testing. So next comes to your what is the indication for coronary artery revascularization? So what is the indication that indirectly indicating that what is the indication for CABG in case of MI? So here AC, okay, American Heart Association guideline what they tell is only class 1A indication for PCI, percutaneous intervention is only acute STEMI. So in acute STEMI only you could go for PCA and all other conditions CABG has a superior evidence. Okay, so only indication for PCA is acute STMI. Okay, in acute even acute STMI also later after PCA some patients later they will go for definitive CABG also. Okay. So these are the this guideline is very important for the coronary vascularization. So you just see only the level 1 recommendations. So no need to see all the recommendations. You just have to see about the level 1 recommendations. Okay. So in case of unprotected left main stem, the left main stem is involved. CABG is very good. They are telling so because it is level 1 evidence. Okay. And 3 vessel disease. Okay. 3 vessel disease CABG is best. Okay. Everything is CABG is best. Okay. 2 vessel with proximal iliac artery disease and 2 vessel without proximal iliac artery disease. Okay, CABG will be present. Okay, whenever you have this one vessel disease without a proximal LAD artery involvement, both are same. That both are harm. They are telling. Okay, so anything they ask in the MCQ, you just to go for CABG. Okay, because surgeons take the question, they most expect the CABG. Okay, as an answer. And survival benefit, survival difference made still that's not important. And then I'm coming to then they comparing the treatment with many other modalities of treatment. Okay, first they are telling about PCI with PCI versus medical treatment. Okay, if a patient comes to MI, you can go for PCI, medical, surgical. Options are many. So they're just comparing which one is best. Okay. Okay, for that, first they are telling that one trial is called syntax trial. The syntax trial is very important trial. Okay, this is just it tells about CABG versus drug-eluting stent. Okay, the syntax trial is telling about CABG as a drug-eluting stent. So, what is that syntax trial conclusion is? Their conclusion they gave one syntax score system called syntax score. Okay, so which is based on the location, severity, and extent of the coronary stenosis. The low score indicating less complicated anatomical CAD. Okay, if the score is less, then it is less complicated. The score is very high complicated. Okay, so if the score is high, 33, more than 33, then it is called high complicated. Okay, so
That's it. That's you remember. Just remember syntax is between CABG with us. CABG is DES. Okay. So CABG with the DES is our syntax trail. Just remember. So then comes the next page 1689. So what are the other trials? We can go for PCA versus CABG. So I already saw on syntax trail. Syntax trail is PCA, percutaneous intervention means they are we are percutaneous intervention. They will give DES only. Okay. So the other trials is syntax trial, Lehman's trial. Okay, and the pre-combat trial, Noble trial, Excel trial. This all trial. If you are not sure about any trial, just to go with the option PCA with the CABG. Okay. Many of the trials is mainly for PCA with the CABG. Okay, just remember syntax, Lehman's, pre-combat, Noble, and Excel trial. Okay, actually CTVS is very important. In 2017 exam, they asked around 16-17 questions from CTVS.
Yeah.
Because most of the pages are not going to take CTVS now, so they are asking more from CTVS to encourage the CTVS department. So then your revascularization options for LCA-CAD. LCA-CAD means for left circumflex artery, a coronary artery disease is present. Okay. What they're telling is, although CABG is the gold standard, now PCA is an emerging operation, alternative mode for revascularization in some patients. Okay. Just to go through this. Okay. So in case of they can ask, okay, what is the options? Revascular options for LCA-CAD. LCA-CAD, you can go for PCA. Okay. It's good actually they're telling. But so in case of proximal LAD, LAD disease, proximal left artery disease, both are equal. PCA and CABG both are equal. Okay. So if you want to, so the completeness of revascularization, CABG is present. The CABG is best. Okay. And if LV systolic dysfunction, in case of left ventricular systolic dysfunction is present, just one trial is there that is called Stitch trial. So Stitch trial is for systolic. Just remember systolic dysfunction, Stitch trial. Stitch trial is for systolic dysfunction. It compare CABG with the GDMT. Okay. So glycerol dinitrate. So it's a Stitch trial is mainly for your left ventricular systolic dysfunction. Okay. So here and all the choice of this and all is variable with the surgery. Okay.
What is GDMT?
So it's medical therapy actually. Okay. So what they are telling here, you see, so old studies and all they are telling that better survival with the CABG than with the medical therapy alone. Okay. But finally what they are telling is based upon the surgeon. Okay. Surgeon's judgment only. Whether CABG is best or PCA is best. Okay. So just to remember, this trial is for left ventricular systolic dysfunction. So
I don't know whether surgeons doing PCA or not.
What?
Surgeons doing angioplasty, yeah?
I don't know. Western they are doing on that. I don't know.
All are interventional cardiologists.
Interventional cardiologists, they are given the word also. Interventional cardiologists and cardiac surgery.
Okay.
Well, revascular options for previous CABG. Suppose CABG is already done. Then again got in stenosis. Then which is the best option? That is the question. Then both are equal only. PCA and CABG are equal only. It depends upon the indication. Okay. So when CABG is good, in case of revascularization is whenever proximal LAD is obstructed, okay, and the extensive anti-ischemia is present, then it is CABG having some improved survival. Okay. Proximal LAD with the extensive anti-ischemia, then it has some improved survival. So patient with the ischemia in other locations, those with the patent lemma to the LAD-RT, that it is unlikely to experience any survival benefit. Okay, the improved survival only you can see in the proximal LAD with the anti-ischemia. CABG is very good. Okay, very good survival is there. Okay. So next comes your ST segment elevation myocardial infarction, acute myocardial infarction. Okay, STEMI. They are coming about STEMI, acute myocardial infarction. So I already saw in acute STEMI, PCA is good. Okay. PCA giving greater survival advantage. Okay, then thrombolytics. So we already know door to balloon time is 90 minutes. So door to needle time is 30 minutes or less. So door to balloon is target door to balloon is when they are planning for PCA, the balloon should inflated within 90 minutes, 1.5 hours. And when they are planning for thrombolytics and all, the drug should be given within half an hour. Okay, half an hour when the patient reaching the door of the hospital. Okay, that's their telling. So door to balloon 90 minutes, so door to needle 30 minutes. And the CABG best to be deferred for 3 days or more after the admission for AMA in non-urgent cases. Okay, so finally what they will do in acute STEMI also, they will go for CABG only, for depending upon the indications. Okay, so they deferred for 3 days after admission for AMA in non-urgent cases. And the trial is there, the shock trial is there. Okay. Regarding revascularization, the trial is shock trial. Okay, revascularization, emergently revascularization trial. Okay. In patient with AMI, CABG is usually performed in conjugation with the operation to treat a specific complications such as refractory post-infection angina, papillary muscle rupture with metallic infraction VST. Then you come to, suppose the patient comes with, so this is your surgical decision making tree of coronary revascularization. This is overall they give one flow chart. So in the patient having presence of coronary artery disease with the anatomic indication for revascularization. Okay, then you have to rule out the high risk for CABG. If the high risk of CABG, what are the high risk of CABG? So these are the conditions that they are having high risk for CABG. One is advanced COPD and home oxygen itself and frailty, dementia, recent hemorrhagic effect, child B or C cirrhosis, and advanced cancer with the short life expectancy and a non-viable myocardium and the prohibitive surgical risk. Okay, these are the risk, high risk for CABG. Okay, these are the high risk for CABG. Okay, these are the high risk for CABG. So what you have to do for if the high risk for CABG is present, then you have to go for other options. PCA with medical treatment. You should not do CABG. So these are the mainly you can simply you can tell us a contraindication for CABG, like that we can take. So we can go for PCA medical treatment. If they are not having any of this problem, then you have to proceed with the CABG. Okay. Okay. So both are the options. Okay. This based upon the evidence. It's not that CABG is having some better evidence. Okay. Evidence grade is high on A. Okay. You can go for PCA also. If CABG is not available, you can go for PCA also. Okay. But CABG is having some higher evidences. The high level evidences. Then how to do CABG they are telling. Okay. CABG procedures and all they are telling. So it's already very well explained in Bailey. So just to see, the priming solution consists of a balanced salt solution. So it's often a starch solution. So what is a priming solution? Is starch solution. Okay. So then you know about this one. What is the cardioplegia used is potassium. Okay. Potassium, say using is a cardioplegic agent. Okay. So what is the inflow cannulation? All are MCQ. The most common site for inflow cannulation is ascending aorta. The alternative, what are the other sites for inflow cannulation is femoral artery, right axillary artery. Okay. Okay. So what is cardioplegic solution? The cardioplegic solution will be given in the ratio of 4:1. Okay. So when you are infusing the cardioplegic solution,
Hello.